What's up, builders? This is Raise the Bar Radio, where we talk about building wealth, raising capital, and all in all, raising the bar in your business and your life. This is the No BS podcast for capital raisers, investors, and entrepreneurs who are serious about scaling their business and living life on their own terms. I'm Seth Bradley, securities attorney, real estate investor, and entrepreneur, bringing you world-class strategies from the best in the game. If you're ready to raise more capital, close bigger deals, build a better you, and create true financial freedom, you're in the right place. Let's go. Welcome to Raise the Bar, elevated conversations around entrepreneurship, capital raising, and real estate. I'm Seth Bradley, your grateful host. Strap in because today's guest is a capital raising powerhouse. Brad Blazar has raised over $2 billion and has been behind some of the biggest capital campaigns in the industry. He's a best-selling author, a global speaker, and a true master of investor psychology. If you raise money or want to scale your business, Brad is someone you absolutely need to listen to and you need to study. Brad, welcome to the show.
It's great to be here, Seth, and what a great introduction today.
Thanks. Yep. You made the introduction. You are the introduction. You made it easy with all the incredible things that you've done, especially in the capital raising space, which is exactly who our listeners are. They are capital raisers. They are real estate investors, people looking to scale their business. So you are the perfect person to help them do that. So love having you on today.
Appreciate it.
All right, man. I'd like to kick it off by asking you, when somebody comes up on the street that's a stranger and they ask you what you do, what do you tell them?
That is such a great opening question because most people blow that and don't really answer properly. When people ask you what you do, really what they want to know, Seth, is what you can do for them.
Right.
Yeah. So I kind of turn it around and I say, well, what I do is I teach business owners, entrepreneurs, and professionals how they can actually invest in assets like businesses or real estate. And the best part about it is they can do that using other people's money. Might that be something you'd like to learn more about? Now, invariably, most of the people say, yeah. And so then I move them forward to a webinar or to a boot camp or to a conversation. Because at the end of the day, the majority of people out there in the world are looking for financial freedom. They're looking for passive income. They know and they see other people that are doing that, but they have no idea how to do that themselves. And so, rather than saying I'm a 3-time author or I'm a speaker or I'm a coach or I'm a real estate entrepreneur, I turn the conversation around and say, here's what I can do for you. And if it resonates with you, then obviously they want to go deeper. And then, of course, we move them into a conversation that hopefully leads to them either investing or becoming a client of the firm, or at least getting some knowledge so that we can help transform their life and position them to get to a better place financially.
Totally. And, that's such a powerful concept. It's other people's money, right? It's powerful and it's dangerous to a certain extent. I think people, people really, I see a lot of people in this industry just, they don't feel the gravity of it. Like they don't respect it like they should, right? Other people's money should be held at a level high above anyone else's.
Yeah, there's so many people out there that, they want to raise money and they're not even anywhere close to being ready. They have no infrastructure, no systems, no accounting, no bookkeeping, no compliance. And I'm like, dude, you got no idea, because it's easy as hell to raise capital. It's hard as hell once you have it to become a good steward of the capital and actually become the fiduciary that you're expected to be. And, as as a securities attorney, once you take someone's capital, you're in the securities business. Doesn't matter whether it's one person or whether it's 50 people. And 100%. I keep telling the people that I consult and coach, I'm not an attorney. I don't give legal advice, but I've only been doing this for 40 years and I've raised over $2 billion, more than any other expert out there. I've been the president, head of capital markets for billion-dollar companies. I've drafted probably 200 PPMs myself. But I said, sometimes in business, as we all know, bad things happen to good people. All the best underwriting, all the best intentions can literally get tossed out of the window. You get coastal real estate and then you get a hurricane, or you get property in Oklahoma and you got a tornado, or, we have another COVID. And all it takes is one disgruntled investor that lost their money and the shit hits the fan. And, that's where you need the infrastructure, the PPM, which really is an insurance policy to the issuer, to hopefully disclose as many of the potential risks that could theoretically happen. And, I mean, I've been doing this long enough. I'm sure you probably know most investors don't even read the PPM. They might glance through it, but I've actually appeared as an expert witness in many trials where they say, did you receive a copy of this document? Yeah, I kind of recall getting that. And did you review it? Well, I kind of glanced at it, I kind of went with what they told me. And of course, I went through the pitch deck. Why don't you turn to page 58 and actually read the paragraph with that little star? And right there is the risk disclosure. That is the get out of jail free card for that, that sponsor that is caught up in the moment because he disclosed in advance of the investment and the investor should have known better. But that's a whole different story. But yeah, no, I love what I do. I love educating people on this whole industry because I do think people get into it and unfortunately they get out over the end of their skis doing things that are not compliant or that are sloppy, and then ultimately they end up getting caught.
Totally. Tons to unpack there, man. But yeah, I mean, I see it all the time too. I mean, people just, there's no malintent there.
Yeah,
But a lot of times they don't realize that there are securities laws, period. They don't realize that, hey, I can't just take money from somebody and use it in my deal and, that everything's going to be fine. Like that we do have to put together a PPM, that we do have to consult with a securities attorney, that we do have to have all these systems and processes in place. So in case something does go wrong and things do go wrong, that you are protected and you don't lose everything that you've worked so hard to get.
yeah, absolutely. Totally agree. Yeah.
Yeah. That's really interesting that you've been an expert witness when some of those things play out. I would love to hear. I would love to hear more about that. That's really interesting. That's what I've seen too. Where it's like these documents get longer and longer and longer over time, right? And it's for good reason. It's because of situations like you were a witness in, where it's like, okay, we needed to list all the different things that could go wrong, that could possibly go wrong, so they are properly disclosed to the investors and that they can be aware. Now, whether they read them or not, that's a totally different story, but they should be aware of the risks, all the things that could go wrong, so they go into each investment with their eyes wide open.
Absolutely, 100%. And, I coach people on how to build trust, how to build relationships with potential investors. And I think one of the best ways we can do this is as we're talking to a potential investor, after we give them the pitch and we get them emotionally excited about the investment, we pause and we say, Seth, I'd also be remiss if I didn't share some of the potential risk with you in this investment, just to be totally transparent. And so what I now do is I walk you through 2 or 3 of the potential risks and then how my company would respond to those risks. And it does 2 things. It builds a lot greater trust because most sponsors and issuers do not talk about the potential risks. But the second, it does something very subconsciously to that investor. He's like, wow, I had a whole series of questions about some of these risks. And now that he's actually talked about some of them and answered how his company would respond to those concerns, I really don't feel I have to ask him about these others because they probably have thought of those too. And so it really helps convert that potential investor now to somebody that will actually write you a check because you've given them comfort in the moment. And that's something that I think a lot of people really need some help with. I've used it in my conversations. Many of the people we've worked with have used it in theirs. And they said, man, I wasn't doing that before. But now that I'm doing that, I'm building much greater relationships, much greater trust. And my conversion on the number of people that I have to talk to get ultimately to invest has gone up dramatically. And I said, of course it is, because you're being transparent with that person. They know there's risks. And for that sponsor issuer that's not talking about those, they're not being totally transparent.
Yeah, I mean, investors are smarter and they're more skeptical nowadays, especially with the things that have gone on the last couple of years. Like everything in real estate hasn't been hunky-dory the last couple of years like it has been for the last 15. So it's, investors that may have gotten burned in some deals, things like that, they're just more skeptical. They ask more questions. They're smarter, and being able to relate to them with, hey, there are some things that could go wrong and these are some of those things, that builds that trust. And then it actually helps you get them across the line, and they should be aware of those things anyways.
Absolutely. Totally agree. You bet. But, it's also, the procedural things that often people screw up as well, right? There's the Reg D notice filing to claim the exemption. Then there's the blue sky monitoring as you're onboarding investors. I guarantee that's something a lot of people are not following through with as they build out their capital stack. And then of course there's a lot of the other issues as well. I see it all the time where people feel, oh, I need some help raising capital. Let me go get a couple of co-GPs. And so, now the co-GPs come on, they help raise capital, and then the deal blows up, and a good plaintiff attorney kind of goes around and says, okay, well, what was your role in the relationship? Oh, I was just responsible for raising some capital. Well, did you have any other substantial responsibilities? No, not that I can think of. That was pretty much it. And I'm like, you screwed the whole deal, because now you receive transaction-based compensation for the raising of capital, which defines broker-dealer activity, which of course you're not. You didn't assume many of the other responsibilities that a true sponsor or a general partner undertakes. So when you join a team as a co-GP, you need to sit down and spell out some defined responsibilities to you and the other members, so that now you can respond and say, yeah, and I also joined on a monthly call with our property management team. I was actually involved in the underwriting. I actually traveled to the property to take a look at it when there was some, now you're doing the things that truly qualify you as a issuer sponsor, because you're claiming that same exemption that, the issuer is. And so a lot of people are not doing that properly. They're just like, oh, come on in the team, be a co-GP, help us raise capital. And, it's fine if you don't get caught. But when you get caught, you wish you had done it a little bit differently.
Pardon the interruption, but we don't do ads. Instead, know that if you're raising capital for real estate, my law firm, Raise Law, is here to give you the expert legal guidance you need to raise capital compliantly and structure and close your deal. And if you're looking for a done-for-you fund-to-fund solution, TribeVest is the industry's only all-in-one setup and fund administration solution. Visit raise.law and tribevest.com to learn more. Yeah. I mean, you saw a ton of that, right? It just got abused. I mean, I think it's just part of growing as an industry, growing as as a group of entrepreneurial people. They see a rule, right, and you push it. You just push it and you push it and you push it and see how far you can push it. And because the real estate market has been so good for so long, nobody was getting in trouble. There was no investigations. Nobody was getting sued. There were no investors that were unhappy. So everybody that was doing things that they shouldn't have been doing weren't really getting caught, because nobody flagged it. It didn't matter. But now you're seeing where there are capital calls, there are investors that are unhappy, and some of those things are starting to come to light. And you're seeing, that co-GP model starting to die out a little bit. So, it's perfectly fine to be a co-GP, to be a GP. I don't even like to say co-GP.
Yeah, right.
Perfectly fine to be a GP, to be an active partner in the business. That's business, right? That's how you put a group together and share skill sets and share money, things like that. But it's when you start abusing those things and people start raising capital and just getting paid to raise capital, and that's it, and not take an active part in the business. That's where you get in trouble, and you need to have a license for that, just to be clear. You need to have a license to be able to do that, just like you need a license to practice law or to be a doctor. You need a license to raise capital, unless you find some sort of an exemption, that is. And I did also want to comment on the structural, the procedural things that people skip over. I've seen that time after time as well, where people, they're kind of like doctors and dentists, or I should say doctors, where they're just like go to their family doctor when they need a specialist. The same thing with attorneys. They'll go to their family attorney or a real estate attorney, and then they try to get them to draft a PPM for them, and then that attorney forgets to file for their Form D or file their blue sky notices, and then it gets years down the line, and you find out like, oh no, we never did that. It's crazy, and people just need to be aware of that.
Yeah, you're right. And people ask me why through our platform we have relationships with 5 different law firms. They're all securities attorneys, but it gets down to the fact that this one is a real estate securities attorney. So he's got deep knowledge in Reg D and PPM and securities, but also all of the risks that are in the real estate space. Then I got another guy that's M&A, business acquisitions. We have a lot of students that are raising capital for theatrical productions like Broadway shows and major motion pictures. So would I take that client to the real estate guy? Hell no. because in the risk disclosures, he has no idea about any of the risk in the entertainment business. So I got an entertainment securities attorney. And so it comes back to what you said, Seth, is do you want to work with a generalist or do you want to work with a specialist? And, in this industry, going to quote a general practitioner, someone that does family law, or someone that's a defense attorney, and say, hey, can you help review this PPM or can you draft the PPM? Sure, they might be able to do it because we all know they're templated documents. But at the end of the day, it's not going to be nearly as substantial in protecting that sponsor as going to someone that says, yeah, I'm a real estate securities attorney. That's 90% of the business that I do.
Right. Totally. Totally. You had mentioned, all the folks that you have helped raise capital and that you mentor and teach. Tell me more about that. Tell me more about your program and who it's perfect for. And let's start there.
We started this about 5 years ago, and it was so funny. When I started 5 years ago, it's like I was the only person on social media, I think, offering consulting and coaching really on the whole, attracting, raising capital. Now there's so many options out there. And, when I click through them and then I get on a Zoom with some of the people offering services, they don't even realize they're breaking the law. Like, oh, we take a consulting fee of 3% to put you in front of investors. I'm like, oh, great. That's wonderful. I love that. But are you a broker dealer? Oh, no. Well, don't you know you're breaking the law? You can't be doing this. Oh, well, we're up in Canada. I don't care if you're located on the moon. You can't be charging U.S. customers 3% as a consulting fee. It's not what you call it. It's the activity that is defined by the action. But it's so funny that people are marketing their services all over social media and they're breaking the law actually doing it. And unfortunately, people are going to hire that company and, again, get in trouble. But we started this about 5 years ago, and it's now expanded to a global platform where, we coach people globally, Australia, New Zealand, up in the UK, Canada, over in some European countries. Of course, here in the United States, we're really, really strong because each country and, of course, each province in Canada naturally has a different regulatory environment. But how you work with investors, what you say to investors, how you move them forward through a proven process to build trust with investors, that's universally global everywhere you go. Because at the end of the day, we know people invest with people they know, like, and trust. But what's really interesting and what really separates me from most of the other options that are out there is just my vast experience. I've been raising capital since the age of 21. Started in college working for a small oil company, and then eventually at 23 launched my own oil company with the investor base that I had actually cultivated, grew that to a pretty nice medium-sized business through the 80s and 90s. And then when I exited, I went into financial services, not as a stockbroker, not as an advisor, but as a true paid capital raising expert. And so I had all my securities registrations, I could be paid commissions, and I was working for some of the biggest financial services firms in the world. These guys managed billions of dollars. And so I was raising money like most people, accredited investors, doing a lot of events, networking. But then as I grew my experience, I started realizing there's a much smarter, much more efficient way to raise serious money. And what really changed my life dramatically and my perspective about capital raising is when I had my oil company, I had a very small licensed sales team, and we were, buying lists, hosting events, and, we were fishing for minnows. We'd get $25,000, $50,000 checks. And one day, a friend of mine, his name was John, who was an RIA, registered investment advisor, called me. He said, hey, man, I just want to call you. I've been watching you. And I think what you're doing would be very suitable for some of the clients whose money we manage. And so, they went through the due diligence process, which, of course, they had to. And we hosted one event, just one, where he got about 15 of his clients together, Seth. I came in, I spoke for about 30 minutes, did some Q&A left. And he did all the work. He followed up with each couple that was there. And in 2 weeks, he sent me $2.5 million. And I was just like, whoa, this is great. I did a 30-minute presentation that just sent me $2.5 million. So then I got my little sales team together and I said, hey, guys, we got to build relationships like this, because if we can find 4 to 6 more people like John, I would almost guarantee we could probably raise 3 to 5 times as much money next year compared to what we've done in the last 12 months. And so that's what we started doing. And, we went from a small oil company raising 15, 20 million to 50 and 100 million, because what we realized is this concept that I teach people: market to the 1, to reach the masses. There are people out there that control huge pools of money. And, you just build a relationship like our data storage fund. It's a brand new fund. Now, we have a partner in that has a little bit of a track record, but my fund is a new fund, no prior track record. All the money I've raised has come through RIA relationships. So when people tell me, oh, I got to have a track record, I got to have been in business for so many years, I'm like, bullshit on that. I just raised $1 million in the last 2 weeks that came to me straight from RIAs on a brand new fund that we just launched to invest in data equipment. And so it's really just building the trust. But if you start to understand this concept and start focusing on building relationships with RIAs, I also am an expert in building relationships with broker-dealer distribution. The difference there, of course, is that the broker-dealers get paid commissions to buy and sell securities, so they expect to get paid a commission that does affect the returns in your capital stack. And then, of course, you go into the family office space. You can go, of course, into the institutional space where I've raised millions from as well. And so with our platform, we call it Capital Connections, we can literally take people on this journey and teach them how to raise money from accrediteds, then RIAs. And then if they want to move into broker-dealer distribution, great, we can do that too. You want to raise money from sovereign wealth funds. I've raised $50 million from Israel. So, there's this path to progression. And many of the people that we consult are already at $1 billion in AUM, very successful. Why do they need Brad Blazar services? Because they want to get to $3 billion. And they know the only way they can do that is with bigger investors that are going to be writing much bigger checks. The broker dealers that can send them hundreds of millions of dollars a year. Or, going into the insurance industry and getting insurance companies to fund their funds or their larger deals. And so really that's what we do a little differently than most of the other platforms that are out there. I also take people to events with me. So I go to about 45 events every year, Seth, that are curated for family offices, RIAs, people in that space. Once people are investor ready, I'm like, hey, Seth, come with me. Let's go to this event. Let me introduce you to everybody. And so now I create that proximity for you where like you're in the room for 2 days building those relationships. And now all you got to do is just follow up on that to move those relationships forward. That's really the magic that what you do here that I think is very different than some of these other platforms that are out there.
For sure. And Brad, do you work with people that are just getting started, or do they need to be kind of to a certain level in their capital raising game where they're trying to move from, maybe just raising capital from high net worth individuals and trying to maybe take their capital raising game up a notch and get to RIAs, broker dealers, family offices, or is it really across the whole spectrum?
It's across the whole spectrum. We have beginners. We have people that have raised $1 million or an amount less than that are kind of just getting started. And then, of course, we have people that have been hugely successful that come to me with hundreds of millions of dollars, or in many cases, they're billion-dollar companies that we also consult. Now, obviously, at those higher levels, they don't need coaching and mentoring. They don't need to know how to raise money. What they need is an understanding of how to tap into a network that they want to get into that they're not in yet. Like, let's talk about building distribution with broker dealers. Okay, you need a third-party due diligence report. You need a managing broker dealer that's going to take the lead. You probably want to look at hiring what we call wholesalers that are licensed professionals that cover a region of the country that have a book of business where they know those broker dealers. They know the financial advisors. And so every day, much like a pharmaceutical rep, what are they doing? They're going into the offices of advisors, telling your story, carrying in your bag, obviously your PPM and your literature, and they're pushing that relationship to then do client events that will send you business. And over time, as you build that platform, you slowly start to scale it. But, there are companies that I was working for as the head of capital markets, and this is just going to blow people's minds. They're raising over $1 billion a year in equity. But they ain't raising it. They got a whole platform of financial advisors that are sending them checks every single day because as those advisors are sitting down with the clients whose money they manage, they're making the recommendation, Mr. and Mrs. Jones, our company's done third-party due diligence on this great real estate sponsor. They've got a beautiful hotel portfolio, and my suggestion is we put $250,000 of your capital to work over here to get that nice 8% distribution. And then they go home, they think, sounds good to me. Before you know it, you're raising serious amounts of capital.
Yeah, yeah. Is there anything different that those types of investors or those types of relationships are looking for in a deal or in a fund, as opposed to, let's say, your retail investor that's just a doctor or dentist, a high net worth
Sure.
individual? What does that look like? What's the difference there?
It's not really so much that it's different, Seth. I think what they do is they ask the harder questions. Most doctors, most entrepreneurs are not going to sit down and really drill a sponsor and say, hey, Seth, let me really get a close understanding of your compliance department. Or let's take a look at your investor relations, or let's take a look at your accounting infrastructure. So, what these larger investors are really doing is they're checking the box
Hmm.
on each of these things they know you need to have to be a good steward of capital. Now, to get into some of these networks, you also need what we call third party due diligence. There are firms out there like Michelot's, a law firm out of Omaha. We know that team real well. There's another group out of Minnesota called FactRight. And what an investment sponsor can do is hire these firms that come in and do a institutional high quality level due diligence, and then they prepare a report on you as a sponsor to say we vetted them, we've done bad actor background checks, there's no litigation, none of the principals have any bankruptcies or prior SEC disclosures, and they write a whole report. Well, what that becomes is kind of like a pedigree, because now when you're talking to that industry of broker dealers or RIAs, you can say, look, we got a third party due diligence report that's very institutional that we'd love to make available to you. And then once they go through that, you now have much greater credibility. And that really now opens those discussions. In the broker dealer industry, they're mandated by FINRA to go through a process in how they conduct their due diligence. And on the independent broker dealer side, the majority of those firms won't even talk to you until that's in place, or at least they know that you've retained the services of one of those firms to put that in place. Because, the industry is so litigious. Like these broker dealers know if we recommend an investment to an investor and they end up losing money, the registered rep that sold it's going to be named as a defendant. We have supervisory roles as a broker dealer, we're going to get named, and we don't want to be named. So what do? We try to push that burden off to a professional firm and say, well, they did the due diligence. We did the due diligence, and that, of course, was the best we could do, and it hopefully helps protect them in that process. But, it's really amazing because we coach everybody, beginners all the way up to intermediates and very senior capital raisers.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, what I'm hearing there is professional, right? Like it's a different level of professionality of being buttoned up, having all your financials, your accounting, your compliance, your legal, everything has to be there. You have to know your fund, you
Yep.
have to know your deal. I see lots of people out there that they don't even know their deal that they're raising for, right? You can ask them very simple questions about their numbers or the
Yep.
business plan and things like that, and they can't answer it. They
Right.
don't know, or they just start making stuff up as they go. You
Yep.
can't do that. You can't do that at that level, and you shouldn't be doing it at any level
Right.
because if something goes wrong, again, as we already talked about, that'll get you into trouble. But
Absolutely.
especially when you get to that higher level, it's just unacceptable. It just does not work. And it
Yep.
sounds like that's kind of part of the coaching, the program, the things that you teach in your program.
Yeah, oh, absolutely, 100%. And, we've had many securities attorneys, come to our events and other professionals that serve the industry. And the big takeaway when we get testimonials is Brad teaches things at his events that we're just not seeing at any other event in the industry. And of course, they go to all the other events that the other experts you and I probably follow. And they're like, he not only breaks it down with a blueprint and proven systems and structures, he talks about the things that most others just aren't talking about, because his body of knowledge, having been licensed with FINRA as a principal and having been the president or head of capital markets for billion-dollar companies, just he knows stuff that these other people just have no knowledge of. So he imparts that knowledge to the community that he's in front of, first to protect them, but also to build a foundation. I want all my students to be able to sleep well at night, Seth, knowing, okay, everything we're doing is totally compliant. I got nothing to worry about. Because I think that a lot of people that ultimately get caught that, have to either pay penalties or get censored or worse yet, get barred from the industry or, God forbid, actually get thrown in prison. I don't think they wake up one day and say, hey, let's start a Ponzi scheme, or hey, let's go into business and not do things properly. I think, like you said, they start doing stuff. It's brought to their attention they're doing something wrong. They try to cover it up, and then they get caught. And that's where the shit hits the fan. But if you start the business properly and you have everything in place where you don't have to quote do any cover up or let's sweep it under the rug, man, you could scale your business to multi-billions of dollars like some of the firms that I've worked with and not have a damn thing to worry about because you're being compliant throughout the whole process. You have the systems in place, you have the relationships with the attorneys, you got the relationships with a good accounting firm that's handling your distribution, your year-end reporting. You have segregated accounts where you're not commingling. And that's another thing that we should talk about. Oh my God, I see so many people out there that are commingling funds. And I'm like, you can't be doing that. My God, that's like a nightmare.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, the checks and balances that you're talking about, right? Like you have, a securities firm in your corner. You've got an accounting firm in your corner. They're constantly monitoring what you're doing, your financials,
Yep.
where money is flowing in and out of, if you're commingling, things like that. Those are the things that keep you out of trouble, save you from yourself, right? Because people, like you said, they don't start off saying, "Let's start a Ponzi scheme." I mean, maybe it's happened before. I'm sure it has, but for the most part, you start out as a legitimate business, and then things start going wrong, and you start trying to cover them up, and you start raising more money to replace the money you lost, and you're like, maybe if I just get this much further, we'll be able to pull ourselves out of this, and it doesn't
It just
turn
doesn't
out.
happen. Yeah.
It just doesn't
Yeah.
happen. But if you have the right partners, the right checks and balances in place, you can save yourself from yourself.
Absolutely. Yeah. I totally agree. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's been tougher the last few years, kind of now since the interest rates have spiked up, since you're seeing some capital calls in some deals, things like that. The market's slowed down in real estate specifically. It's harder to raise capital for a lot of these folks. Sounds like you're still having a lot of success, and a lot of your students are having success. What are you seeing out there that's effective, maybe that other folks are struggling with when they're raising capital in today's specific market?
I think really what you need to understand, and what I've seen with many of these other platforms out there that host events or have quote a coaching community, is the person running that platform will largely teach his community how to raise capital the same way he did it. Whether it's social media or whether it's hosting events or whether it's buying lists of accredited investors, because that's really all that person knows. And so, just to throw something out there, if I said, hey, Seth, what I want to do is I want to buy you a list of about 3,000 accredited investors that live there in your proximity in California. We're going to get you the names, the emails, the addresses, the phone numbers. And then we're going to do a mailing to that audience of people to curate a small event. And then you're going to come in and you're going to get up in front of that room. Hopefully there'll be 30, 40 people there and, share your presentation. And on the back end of that, you'll raise millions of dollars. And you're like, no, I can't do that. And I'm like, well, why? I mean, I've raised hundreds of millions. I just have a fear of public speaking. I don't feel comfortable getting in front of her. So that, even though it's worked for me and others, may not work for you. So what we do is we literally give people about 12 different ways to raise capital. And I guarantee you'll find a couple that actually work. It could be hosting client events, golf outings. It could be basically using social media. We know that obviously works, where you move people forward through an opt-in. They become a qualified lead. There's some great companies out there that we work with, like Capitalist Pro. We love Dallin. We love Paul Karchner over there. They've really built a great platform with the email templates, the graphics to create that what I call trust, or that nurturing timeline that's on autopilot for you. And many of our students get that bundled into their package. So you get the coaching, you get the pitch deck, you get your fund. You also get this great CRM system that is your internal infrastructure that you're going to need to be successful. So they're one of our partners. But I think that it really comes down to finding what is within that person's comfort zone that they can be consistent with. Because where most people fall off the bus is they go to an event, they meet people, or they get investor interest. They have one conversation with that investor. They immediately send them a pitch deck, and then, of course, nothing happens. And I have a term for it. I call it premature presentation. you pitched way too early and you have no trust with this person. So naturally, they're going to say no. And what you hear as a new capital raiser is no, no. And then you're like so frustrated, like, this is impossible. And you just give up. It's not impossible. You're just doing it the wrong way. So slow down, build a relationship, wait to pitch. There'll be that time. And then when you do it at the right moment, you're going to see a dramatic difference in the outcome. And, it's frustrating because we have so many people that come on board that ultimately just don't do the work. You just can't go to events and expect people to say, oh man, Seth was great meeting you. Like, I want to send you some money next week. It don't work that way. These people are not ATM machines, folks. They're real human beings. But if you follow that system properly, you can literally raise millions upon millions of dollars.
I love that, man. I love that you have a multifaceted approach. You provide different options.
You have to.
You pointed out that a lot of people that teach things, not just capital raising, but even in like real estate, they'll be like, "Hey, multifamily is the only thing you can do. RV parks is the only way to go. Office buildings, not so much anymore. That's the only thing you can do, right? Because that's the only thing that they know.
Right.
But when you get somebody that actually has a wider purview of the market and can say, well, look, in maybe these times this works, or these times this works, or maybe this will work for you because this is your personality, or maybe this will work because these are the people that you're talking to. Right? Like there's different tools and different strategies that can be deployed in different times, rather than just saying, this is the only way you can do it. And you have to take my advice. And that's because if you don't, nothing else will work. And that's where people get into trouble and they get frustrated and, they might hit a wall and give up and move on to something else.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, it basically begs the question that, I have a long, deep-seated knowledge of multifamily, student housing, storage. I've owned interest in all those, of course, single family. Why am I now raising millions of dollars for data centers? It's because, as you said, the multifamily space has become challenged. There are capital calls. Many sponsors have had to disrupt or lower distributions. And so looking at how challenged it is, my partner and I were looking at our database of investors and asking ourselves, what new exciting opportunities can we bring to our investor community that's going to reward them? It's going to have some great tax benefits, and it's going to give them some great cash flow. And we were introduced, of course, to data storage and data equipment, and we did our due diligence. We met the right team. We looked at their fund. We visited their facility. We actually met with the manufacturer of the servers, et cetera. And so, after going through that process, we're now raising capital to invest in data centers. And actually, it's the equipment that goes into the centers, which are the NVIDIA servers, because that's really what generates the income. You got to understand the whole model. The person that owns the building, which is the data storage building, is just a landlord and we're paying rent. It's the servers that you're getting paid for by the hour to store digital data, AI, videos. Right? What do you think all those cameras and the videos that are security cameras store all that data? It goes on a server somewhere, right? Hospital records, financial records. So the whole world of data, and this is really an amazing statistic. I heard this the other day. 97% of the data stored in the history of the world has been created in the last 3 years. Man. Think about it. Yeah. And so when you look at that and you look at where AI, compute, and everything is headed, all of these big facilities are at overcapacity. And so if you can build and you can basically build the infrastructure, you'll be at close to 100% occupancy almost instantaneously. And then you just share the cash flow with the investors on the same model that you do in real estate. Investors get 70, we get 30. And basically, of course, there's obviously the tax benefits of investing in equipment. And investors love it because it's simple. They can understand what's going on in the world with AI, compute, and of course, technology. And we're like, what you're doing is you're investing in real estate of the future.
Yeah. Data centers are extremely interesting right now. I love that you're on the forefront of that and you've got a fund going for that.
We're going to be doing a conference next year just on the whole industry and be bringing the manufacturers and the operators together. And my partner and I were talking about this. We want to have the largest, or at least one of the largest, data storage expo/conventions to really educate people. Because people like you and people like the folks that we've talked about here on the show, if they could learn and then maybe diversify, like you said, it's not always multifamily. Real estate is cyclical. every sector goes in and out of favor. And the thing I love about storage is it's one of the most resilient sectors out there. It does well when times are good because people are buying crap and they still love that futon. I still got to keep that futon, or that, I got that big console TV, that's made out of mahogany wood that, is not, I mean, it's these they hang on to that shit. But, it's such a simple business. Student housing, very similar to multifamily, but has different metrics, right? Because there are parental guarantees traditionally on the leases and things like that. But when you understand that you can diversify, and even in our offering memorandums, even if I was raising money for multifamily, I would have language in there that says the investment objectives are to invest in cash flowing commercial real estate, rather than boxing myself in and just saying multifamily. Because now if a great deal comes up over here in storage or in retail or industrial warehouse, I can still move over and do that as well.
Totally, especially when you're a capital partner and you partner with operators that are actually, they have that very specific industry or asset specific knowledge, then you can diversify like that. Like that, that just opens the door for you to say, like, what's the best investment for my investors today, right now, right? Go. Rather than, well, I only know this one thing, so I guess I'm just going to put my investors into that one thing that might not be the best thing for them at the moment.
Yep. Oh, absolutely. You bet.
Brad, let's switch gears real quick. Just want to ask a question I ask all my guests. In a parallel universe or an alternate universe, tell me about a different version of you. If you weren't this capital raising expert that's raised $2 billion plus in capital, what else would you maybe have been? Was there like a pivotal moment in your life where if it went this way, then I would have been something else? Not necessarily, worse or better, but just different.
My undergraduate education was in architecture. And so, I was studying to be an architect, really a real estate developer. So, had I not stumbled into capital raising and had I not moved into the oil and gas industry, more than likely, that's probably what I'd be doing today, as a profession. If I was able to go back in time, and actually had a time machine, would probably want to go back to the days of the Renaissance and, be something like a knight or something like that, protect people. And, a lot of people don't know, but I was actually knighted a couple of years ago. And so, to have the title Sir Brad Blazar is pretty cool, certainly. But, to be able to go back and, carry the sword and the shield and be out there on horseback, basically defending the castle, would be pretty cool as well. But, at heart, I'm just a father. I'm a husband. Obviously, I'm a steward of capital on the investment side. But first and foremost, I really just, define myself as a mentor to others that want to learn this very great skill that can dramatically change their lives and the lives of their entire family. They can create a legacy. Like, Robert Kiyosaki in Rich Dad talks about creating legacy wealth. Now, certainly it's investing in assets, which is the whole gist of the book. But he says, once you understand the principle of other people's money, that is the real secret. That is the key. And I look at some of these companies that I have left where I had worked for them as the head of capital markets. And, these CEOs, they own the company. They're privately held. They're not public. And they got portfolios of like $8 to $20 billion. And when you say, my God, the structure of that relationship on the deals is 70-30, they own 30% of that? Well, these guys are billionaires on paper now, but when they exit, they're having multiple $100 million paydays. Like I remember when I was working for SmartStop, one of the premier self-storage operators, I raised about $250 million. The CEO had just exited a portfolio that he sold to Extra Space for $1.4 billion. And I did the calculation on that, and I said, man, to have a payday. Yep.
I think, so it looks like you had an incoming call. So, just leave it. We'll edit that out, but just continue.
Yep. So that's really, I think, like you said, if I was in a parallel universe, kind of, where I'd be and what I'd be doing. Yeah.
Yeah, awesome, man. That's probably the best answer I've heard, especially the night part.
Most people never get the chance to interview at night.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Brad, this has been awesome, dude. This has been awesome. Really appreciate you having it on the show. Where can our listeners find out more about you?
Oh man, just Google Brad Blazar and I'm all over the internet. I'm like Grant Cardone. You'll see me everywhere, podcast and radio, TV shows, etc. But just go to bradblazar.com. My last name has no E's in the spelling of it, so it's just all A's, Brad Blazar.com. And you'll see our shows, you'll see the books, you'll learn a little bit about me and my background and ways we can help you with many of the tools and resources. Or just follow me on Instagram. I'm the guy with the blue check on Instagram with the same name. But just shoot me a DM. And typically my team or me will get back to you personally within 24 hours. The thing I think that's also real different about my platform, comparing it to others, is that when people work with us, they work directly with me. I know in a lot of the other programs, you sign up, you pay a lot of money, and then you get on that first Zoom, you're like, well, who the hell are you? I'm your coach. What happened to the guy I just had $30,000 to? I thought I was going to be working with him. Oh, no, he's just the owner. We don't do that here. We don't play smoke and mirrors. People want to work with the guy that's raised the $2 billion because they're paying for their network, they're paying for their relationships. And so it's me that you get on the calls. It's me that you actually are working with simply because I know that nobody else can do it as good or better than me. But it's also that we just want to make sure that when people do come into the community, they're actually getting what they paid for and they don't feel that, quote, sleight of hand magic as it relates to, well, I thought I was going to be working with him. And, how much have you raised? Typically they're younger kids that have raised very little or nothing at all. And we believe that that's obviously not a good thing in this industry as well, especially one where compliance and understanding of the regulatory environment and everything we've talked about on the show is really so very important.
Awesome, brother. Appreciate you. Thanks again.
Absolutely. Anytime.
Thanks for tuning in to Raise the Bar Radio. If you enjoyed today's episode, make sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Keep pushing, keep building, and keep raising the bar. Until next time, enjoy the journey.